Chapter 10, February 13th and 14th, 1943. Akiva Safe House, Krakow. The attack on the cafe was well over a month ago, a lifetime ago. 11 dead, the paper said, and 13 wounded. For all we lost, it should have been more. Every day that passed seemed years separated from the day before. The raids on German trains and warehouses, our attack on the cafe, all of that became a memory, a drifting piece of time that felt more like a dream. I had become a shadow of someone I once was, not the actual me. Gradually, I began venturing out into the city and found myself at the building where the bunker had been. It wasn't guarded anymore, so I cautiously entered, hoping not to see anyone else who lived there because how would I look at them and smile as if all was well? It wasn't. I got as far as the bunker's front door before I saw the bullet holes. I raised a hand to feel them and could almost hear the exchange of gunfire that must have happened in this very place. Spots of blood were on the wood floor beneath me. Was that our blood or theirs? I wanted to go in, to see our former bunker for myself, but a door slammed on the floor above, startling me so much that I quickly left, retreating to my safe house, a place where I no longer felt safe at all. It was time to face reality. Those who had made it back to the bunker had probably been killed or arrested. Maybe others had escaped, going to the forest or joining other resistance groups up in Warsaw. As awful as it was to let them go, Reuben, Jacob, Hanusa, and even Esther, I needed to move on and make some decision on my own, beginning with leaving the safe house. Remaining here had become as dangerous as running, maybe more. I was surrounded by weapons, food, money, and blank identification papers ready to be forged. Everything in this apartment gave my people a chance for life, and would also guarantee my death. It was only a matter of time before the neighbors began wondering about the teenage girl who rarely went out and never had visitors, about the people who used to come and go at odd hours, often after curfew. Why hadn't they returned ever since the cafe was attacked? Soon after they asked each other these questions, they would ask the Nazis, who would answer with my imprisonment and torture. Then they would kill me. I wouldn't wait for that to happen. I had to leave Krakow, the scene of our crime. More than anything else, I longed to return to the ghetto one more time, to beg my parents to leave with me. But the guards at the ghetto gates would be watching for me, for the blonde girl who threw grenades at the cafe, then vanished into the night. I wonder if any of my grenades had killed their soldiers. If they had, I wish I'd had more. The Germans were still here. So was I, and I had become more determined than ever. If the Germans took Akiva from me, I would find another resistance group to join and dedicate my life to it. Wherever I went from here, I intended to take with me as much contraband from this safe house as possible. However, as I began packing the next morning, I found a note under my door. I didn't know how long it had been there, only that it hadn't been there last night. With my breath caught in my throat, I unfolded the note, signed by someone known as Antex. Antec. My heart leapt. Antec was a code name for an Akiva member who worked closely with our leaders. Maybe he'd seen me near the bunker. I paced the floor while reading the note over and over. It read, "Despite our losses, we continue to fight. Meet a friend at point B at the usual time tomorrow. Prepare to travel." Point B was in Krakow's Old Town, an easy walking distance from the train station. The usual time was 9 in the morning, 2 hours after curfew was over, when the streets would already be busy enough for us to avoid being any suspicion. When I'd memorized the note, I immediately flushed it down the toilet. After that, I took time to think through every detail. Who of our members might still be alive? Jacob's leg was never the same after that bullet, and Esther couldn't have survived, while others, stronger people, were taken. I liked Reuben, though it would be harder to travel with him than Hanusa. I hoped Hanusa would meet me. But for now, I was happy, just knowing that a spark of life remained within Akiva. No matter who would meet me tomorrow, at least I didn't have to be alone anymore. At least the resistance continued. Chapter 11, February 14th, 1943, Podgor's Ghetto, Krakow. After a long afternoon of arguing with myself, I decided that I had to return to the ghetto and see my parents. I knew it would be dangerous. I knew the soldiers there would still be on alert for any suspected resistance members, but it was also my last chance to say goodbye. The main entry gate was between 2 tall archways with the Star of David on top. The concrete walls that stretched out from either side were also arched, designed to look like a series of Jewish gravestones. That was no accident. The day those walls went up, the people here were buried alive, and this place became a graveyard in waiting. Like every other ghetto, the people wandering about with vacant eyes, empty stomachs, and a gnawing sense that time was running out. I studied the ghetto gates from a distance before entering, carefully targeting a soldier who'd be most likely to let me in. I wanted someone who seemed bored, whose attention had wandered back home rather than staying focused on the war. With a change of a new shift, I finally spotted the guard I'd wanted. I'd seen him here before, and he was kinder than the others. More important, his brain seemed duller than the others, too. But this didn't mean I could relax. 5 other guards were at the same gate, and my timing wasn't as good as usual. I preferred to come when it was busier, when they were more easily distracted and hurried. Nor would my usual excuse be as effective as before. I couldn't tell them I'd come to sell to the Jews. No one had money left to buy anything, and the Nazis were barely keeping up the ruse of caring whether anyone in the ghetto lived another day. But I was smuggling in food for whoever might remain. Today it was canned stew, much heavier than the potatoes I usually carried. I held my posture straight and tall, hoping the Nazi in front of me didn't notice that how the cans hidden in my bag were weighing me down. Normally, if I was discovered, I'd have some chance of talking my way out of any serious trouble. Now with these particular cans, they were supposed to be issued to German soldiers fighting on the front, but we stole them last fall. If they were found, I'd have no way of explaining myself. "Why are you coming to the ghetto today?" the soldier asked me as he examined my papers. "Bringing supplies to Eagle Pharmacy," I said, a lie that was boosted by the blankets I'd packed near the top and around the sides of my bag. I followed it with a smile, hoping to look friendly. Eagle Pharmacy was an excuse that usually worked well here. It was run by a Christian man who gave out medicine for free, tended to minor health issues when he could, and most important, managed a secret operation to smuggle children out of the ghetto into safe houses. We loved him for that. But crucially, the Nazis tolerated him. Better he deal with typhus than them. The Nazi checked the top of my bag, but not as thoroughly as he should have, then waved me inside. I released the breath that I was holding and took my first few steps. "Wait!" This was one of the OD calling me back. I closed my eyes a moment and steadied myself before turning around. I knew about this man. Before the war, he had been a laborer, uneducated and poor. Now he had a blue jacket with lapels and a necktie like the upper class wore, strutting down the streets as if his costume made him something great. When the Nazis asked for volunteers for the Jewish police, he was one of the first to step forward. Now he had power over people who barely looked in his direction only a few years ago, and he relished every moment of it. Some of the Jewish officers had retained their integrity, their loyalty to us, but not this man, who'd chosen cruelty and betrayal as the measure of his worth. If he could not be respected or admired, then he would be feared. It took everything I had to hide my loathing for him, and an extra dose of courage. It was possible he knew me too. He stared at me far too long, then took a lock of my blonde hair in his hands, twisting it around his fingers. "You are Polish?" he asked. "Catholic?" "You see the crucifix I wear?" I countered, gesturing to a chain around my neck. "A Jew would wear a cross if it benefited them. Can you tell me, please, the Hail Mary?" I smiled. That wasn't even a challenge. "Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou." Enough! For a moment, I thought he might let me go, but instead he turned me around. He was going to inspect my bag. "It's only blankets for the children," I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "The pharmacy expected them this morning. I have children too. It's a cold winter." He reached into the top of my bag and pulled out the first blanket. "For my youngest." He pulled out a second blanket. "For my eldest." I had 5 blankets with me, and he was quickly becoming worried I had 5 blankets with me and was quickly becoming worried that he may have an entire flock of cold children. He pulled out 2 more blankets. "For my wife and myself." 1 blanket remained. I felt him staring at it, wondering what he might get in exchange for a blanket on the black market. It wasn't much. I never brought in anything visible with any real value. That was only an invitation for theft. But apparently he wanted that last blanket. He widened the bag, and I felt his hand reach down. When he pulled the blanket up, it would disturb the way I'd wrapped the cans of food. I braced myself, barely daring to breathe. As soon as the can clanked together, my plan was to swing the bag around and hit him with it as hard as I could. Then I'd run. I probably wouldn't get more than 5 or 6 steps, but it'd almost be worth it if I could break his arm. He tugged on the blanket, and because of the cans, it didn't pull out. I began sliding the bag off of my shoulder, ready to strike. Not particularly ready for the consequences. "Let the girl go," a Nazi soldier called to the OD. "She's here for the pharmacy." He grunted at me, but immediately obeyed his German masters. "Get going, then, for what little good a single blanket will do." I nodded back at him, keeping my emotions carefully in check. A part of me regretted not leaving him with the broken arm, though obviously that would have ended even worse for me. I rounded the first corner I came to, then turned yet another corner until I found myself in a street filled with a long line of people, their ration cards in hand, probably waiting for a wagon with bread or soup. Their children darted about on the streets, the stronger ones building snowmen together, while the weaker ones merely sat on the sidewalks, leaning against the buildings, barely looking at me as I passed by. I quietly distributed the cans to them, just as I'd done in other ghettos. 12 cans, 12 families that would have a bite of food tonight. The people here were noticeably thinner since the last time I came. 12 cans of food would save no one. Worse still, I kept 2 cans back. Maybe it was selfish. Maybe that made me, even in some small way, like the OD who took those blankets for his family. But I still had a family too. These 2 cans were for them.